I'm Anthony Fio, and you're listening to the Talk Carby to Me podcast.
Hi, Anthony. Welcome back.
Howdy.
Hi. You're listening to the Talk Carby to Me podcast, everyone. Welcome back again. It's another episode, it's a new day. What's going on in your world?
Not much. Apparently, today, February 23rd, was the first day of summer, so that was interesting.
Oh, that makes so much sense because I've been getting promotion emails for like 23% off. I'm like, what's the big deal about today? But I guess that's the big deal.
Wait, is it really? Well,
Yeah.
today's not the first day of summer. Today, like, we got time for that. Well, it was 84, a high of 84 today.
Oh, okay, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
There's some sort of special going on today. I don't know.
Well, it was funny because I was talking to my mom who lives up in the Northeast, and it's like 30 degrees and freezing rain. And then I'm like, oh, it's 84 degrees here.
Yeah, it's hot. It's toasty.
Yeah, very crazy weather. Apparently, in the Midwest, they're having what they're calling like the storm of like a top five all-time snowstorm.
Oh, really?
At the bottom, like right corner of the country, is in a heat wave.
Man, and we just like we can just not get lucky and get snow, can't we? Like I would still like some snow. I still want like a proper winter. I'm not ready for summer yet, but apparently the world shall neglect us.
Well, it's gonna get it. Well, if we got what 80 degrees today. It'll go back to like cool, chilly weather. Then for probably the next week after that.
Yeah. I don't know, I'm just like not ready for this for the summer yet. Like summer last year was so hot, and today was just like another shock to the system again. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And people don't use air conditioning in North Carolina. Like I noticed that last year already, and I know I complained to you about it, but I'm gonna share with everyone. Like people in Florida will freeze you out, and I love it. And here it's like I don't know. It's like everyone's embracing the summer, and so we must save on air conditioning or something.
The only place that I run into that is the gym that I work at. It gets a little hot, so
Yeah,
it's
you
kind
guys don't have air conditioning.
Well, we installed a heater that looks like it does both, so I'm not sure
Oh,
how that's gonna work. I personally don't mind working out when it's like 110 degrees inside of a box.
yeah, I do. I very much do.
But well, the last time you were there, you were with child. Now you're without child, so
This
maybe
is
that's
true.
different. It's like kind of like doing hot yoga.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
I do like hot yoga, so I will get on board for hot yoga. But I don't know, working out's just not what I'm signing up for.
I
I
like
want to
it.
freeze.
Mm-mm. Nah, it's the same thing where I like doing upper body when I'm hungry.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't enjoy working out when I'm hungry.
It seems something a little bit more primal. I don't know if there's anything to that, or I'm just wrong, which is
Mm,
very possible. But personally, my perception of it is that like that hunger level is a factor.
mm. Doing lower body when you're hungry is probably the worst.
Yeah. Oh, I can't do that. I've tried. It just doesn't go well. There's like then you have the propensity to you might pass out or get like super dizzy, which I've had happen a couple times. Which while I like skirting the edge to blacking out, prefer to do so on a full stomach.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not fun
No.
whatsoever. I am like, if I'm too hungry while I'm working out, like I'm more than likely to tap out or talk myself out of doing certain sets. I'm like, yeah, that was good enough for today. We're going to move on or go home.
You know what that's called, right? You know what David Goggins calls that?
What, like pussy mindset or something?
No, no, not pussy mindset. That's your inner bitch.
Oh, fair.
According
Yeah.
to him, we all have one. So like when we wake up in the morning, like when the alarm clock goes off, if you hit
Mm.
snooze, that's your inner bitch, like hitting the snooze button.
Oh,
Pretty much any
interesting.
situation where you like are like, I don't know if I want to do that today. That's your inner bitch. Which
Did he recently come out with a new book?
he did come out with a new book. He came out with Never Finished, which is the follow up to Can't Hurt Me.
Mm.
I just finished it actually 2 weeks ago.
And
Uh, Personally, so for me, Can't Hurt Me is like an introduction to David Goggins. So if you've seen his social media, he's a crazy motherfucker. He is just a bad dude. Um, Straight beast mentality, like top to bottom. It's unreal. He's a special kind of crazy.
yeah.
Everything that he goes with is, his dark side. He had a very rough childhood. He went into the Navy SEALs. Then he started doing ultra marathons, all these crazy activities, and he kind of goes through like his mindset and what he did to himself as far as like getting ready and his take on affirmations and things of that nature to kind of get him to be like, as he describes it, there's David and then there's Goggins, and Goggins is like the Superman cape that you put on, and
Mm,
you go do the thing and conquer the test. But we're talking about this guy runs like 240 miles, and
yeah.
he has knee pain at mile 20. So Never Finished is the second book. That is like the follow up. So Never Finished, it's from the angle told of someone who became wildly successful. And then it's like, am I still that guy? Like, do I still
Mm,
have it in me to be this at the age of 45?
mm.
And it kind of talks through some of that stuff. It goes through his surgical procedures. I think the two coolest things that he goes through going into it, he's talking about when he gets his he goes to get like his knee scoped or meniscus repaired or something like that, and the doctor, like, he's looking through the labs, or excuse me, he's looking through the reports, and his meniscus was so tough that it was breaking the instruments as they were performing
No
the surgery,
way.
because usually they shave it away and they make it so like you can get some kind of stability there or get rid of the scar tissue, and they were breaking scalpels and instruments and whatever they were using in his knee.
No way.
The other one, he was talking about negative comments, negative hate, and things like that, and what he was doing, because now he's popular, and one of the knocks on him is that he didn't deploy as much. He didn't see a ton of combat. He was just someone who liked to train
Mm,
as opposed to someone who went to war. And he did deploy. He just didn't deploy a lot, as some of the more famous like SEALs and military members have. But a lot of that has to do with he had a couple heart conditions. He had a hole in his heart surgery. He had the knee issue that kept him from being like mission ready, I guess you would say. So
right.
it's one of those things where it's kind of true, but not really. And as far as like, he hasn't done that much. But
Mm,
he went to Ranger School. He went to Navy SEAL School, Ranger School. He went to Delta Selection. So, um, yeah,
mm.
he's a very good book. It's very good about, as far as like, for me, I think it's one of the most influential books I've ever read. The first one, because it kind of reframed a lot of my stuff. Um, and before I continue on there, what I was going to say, as far as like the second thing that's really funny about the book, is his negative comments and hates. He prints them out and then he records himself, like kind of like we're recording right now. He records himself reading them off. So it's like, this person said I'm soft. This person said I'm a bitch. This person said I'm a loser. This person said I'm a liar. And then he'll have like this really long mixtape and he'll play it on repeat and he'll go work out. So he's just constantly listening to all the hateful comments about him, and not one of them is a good comment. Everything is like, you're a fake, you're a fraud, you're a phony, and stuff like that. And he just has like this mixtape of hate that he just runs on.
Is that where you got your inspiration for all your like negative like thinking when you're working out, or your negative inspiration?
Uh, Time out. Can you close your window?
This one back here.
Yeah. No. Like, actually close the window.
Oh, it is closed.
It is?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
No.
You didn't hear like a car drive by while you were talking?
Do you hear anything right now?
A little bit.
It's the street. I don't know. I can't change my location.
Oh. Huh. All right. Ask me the question again.
Oh, okay. Um, is like David Goggins like negative mindset? Is that like where you get your Is that like where you got your inspiration from for your negative mindset?
I wouldn't call it
Like
a
while you're
negative
working
mind.
out, or
I
like your
wouldn't.
negative motivation?
Yeah. So it's not a negative mindset. I'm a very positive person. Actually, I don't even. I tend to lean positive. I'm more of a neutral person. A lot of things don't really kind of affect me too much. So one of the reasons I say the book influenced me a lot is, so when I got into fitness, what I started doing was just channeling bad things that happened, or bad memories, or someone was mean to me, or I got picked on when I was younger, or any kind of situation like that, and I would pull it into my workout, and that's all I would think of. I would just replay it in my
Right.
head. So if someone fucked me over, like, it was just replaying in my head constantly. And what that kind of did for me was, outside of a workout, I didn't have this. I didn't think about it. It didn't really weigh in my mind. Like, I had gotten the frustration out.
For the record,
So
that's what I meant, by the way.
yeah. So when I read his book, he has a similar concept, and he calls it like his cookie jar.
Mm.
So he does almost just about the same exact thing. So for me, I kind of connected with that really well because I was like, oh, this is a great way to explain it. Whereas before, it was just like I'm carrying around Pandora's box. Whereas now it's like, well, there's a reason. Like I keep receipts,
Yeah.
right? So like I'm coming, and like this is when I do that. But
Mm.
the side effects for me is like when bad things happen, I don't really freak out ever, because I'm just used to I'm so desensitized to it. So I don't have a lot of like that panic or that fight or flight anymore. That's constantly
Yeah.
going on.
I really wish that I could have gotten past the first few chapters of his book because he always speaks so highly of him in his first book and like how much of it had an influence on you. And like for me, like his childhood story is like so traumatic. And like I have tried now twice, and it's not even that I restarted the book. I pick up where I left off and I keep trying to get through
The
that
first,
part.
yeah,
It is awful. It is so horrific. Like it's so horrific that like it resonates still in the back of my mind, his story. And I didn't even experience it, right? Like I didn't even see it happen live. Like it's just something I heard, but it's awful. I can't even imagine.
yeah. The first, like, it's I think the first book. It's like the first three chapters. It's just so dark and like it's well written and it's written in a way that's I think when you look at like author styles and stuff like that, like the way that book is written, it's very easy to follow. It's very easy to read, digest, and relate to really quick. And just the fact that the story is so traumatic for the first like three or four chapters, like really kind of like throws you off. But once you can get past that, there's less of those. It's not as like constant walking in a house of horrors. It's more of we've gone through the house. What do we do now?
Right.
And once you can get past that, I think everyone can relate to something in that book. Whether you went through some kind of childhood trauma, you had a death, you had any kind of crazy thing go on, there's something for everyone there.
Maybe I need to do is like just skip the first few chapters.
Yeah. Well, he references it a lot throughout the story, throughout the book, but
Mm.
um, it's definitely it's definitely one of those things where it's a lot in the first beginning of the book. Like I've had people that I recommended the book to. They were like, I started crying like reading like the first few chapters.
Yeah, I mean, it was so heavy. Like it literally, like I had to really reel myself back in. Like it really put me into like a negative, bad spot. But I guess that's part of it, right? Like part of his journey and part of his experience and what you learn from the book. So I get why it's in there. It's
Uh,
just,
yeah, a good overall theme for the first book is talking about that 40%.
mm,
So like his he theorizes basically that a lot of us are functioning at what we think it perceive as our 100% effort is really our 40% effort. So when you
mm,
look at and kind of like how I took away from that. So we've talked about it before on the podcast. The first time that I ran a half marathon was the first time that I had run past 7 miles in my life. So I never trained to run that distance.
mm,
And for me, I had trained to run 6 miles at 10K. And, sometimes you'll get 7 out of there, depending on what the course was or, what your setup was. And so for me, reading that book and then kind of running into that situation where it's like, okay, I hit a point where like now it's the point of the unknown because I don't know what it's like to run 13 miles because I've only ever trained myself for 7. And I thought, yeah, I could easily run 7. 10 sounds ridiculous. And then you go run 13 and you're like, oh, I could do that.
right,
And it kind of leads into that conversation where it's like, well, what else am I leaving on the table?
right,
And you're just going to find like you've reached the point where you think that that's the limit that you're at and just go another step and see what happens and rinse repeat and do that daily and kind of apply that to everything in your life. And that's really the big takeaway from the
yeah.
first book.
Yeah, for me, like I've noticed too, like when I was doing my bodybuilding competition, like I never ever in my wildest dreams thought I could ever even achieve anything close to that. And so like when I did, like it was a huge like eye-opening experience for me. It truly did like change my life and my perception of myself and like things that I can do. It taught me a lot of like if you just keep trying, and you just put the effort into it, even though it might seem ridiculously hard, that's probably the reason why most people don't achieve those things because it is ridiculously hard. So you have to put in like extra effort to get there. So I think you're right. Like by constantly like pushing yourself and achieving things that you are trying to do, things that you never thought you could do, it really does like change your brain a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things where you have to have goals
Yeah.
and the goals, you have to be very particular about the way that you pick goals.
Mm,
one of the ways that you have to pick goals is you have to pick them in a way that they seem impossible.
Yeah.
Because if my goal is to go run 3 miles, I know that I can run 3 miles.
Mm.
So like, but maybe I haven't done it in a year. So I'm like, okay, well, I know I got to do it. So it doesn't have that as much importance to me. And when I get there, it's like, okay, like, yeah, cool. But you want to have stuff that's impossible, or seemingly impossible, because there's more motivation there. There's a bigger prize there. Um,
What would you do with someone though that says like, or like that does set those impossible goals, but they have such a hard time achieving them? Like, you know, those people that set like really ridiculously impossible goals and then they constantly fall short of them.
it depends on the manner in which the goal is constructed. So like, let's say my goal is I want to run. I'll give you one of my impossible goals, is to run the Boston Marathon.
Mhm.
The reason I put it in that category is because, contrary to popular belief, I don't really enjoy running all that much.
Mm.
It's rewarding for me. It's more of like it's like going to the forge for me, right?
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
when you look at like that iron sharpens iron thing, and it's like if you go to a forge and you take a banana with you and you smack the banana on the forge, eventually, after a couple whacks, the banana is not going to get harder. The banana is going to go away, right? So you need like this structure that's preferably iron, and you heat it up a little bit and you smash it with a hammer. That's the running.
Mm.
It gets a little shinier, it gets a little bit more refined, and you smash it again. Now that doesn't have to be running. That can be whatever. That could be the gym. That could be whatever your craft is. That could be your practice. That could
Mm.
be anything that attributes to kind of like a goal. Um, so for me, like that would be like the impossible settings, right? So if that's my goal, the key thing is to have a time frame for that impossible goal, right? So if it's like I want to run the Boston Marathon within the next 10 years, subconsciously I know that I have 10 years to accomplish this goal before I failed. It's very
Mm.
different if I say I want to run this in the next 12 months,
Right.
because then it creates urgency.
Mm. What about those people that like come to you and they're like, I want to start working out like, I don't know, like 4 days a week, and they are sedentary, have never worked out before, and like they all of a sudden want to change everything all at once?
It's also, my answer to that is going to be a boring one. It's also going to be, it depends what the approach is,
Mm. Right.
right? So if you're completely sedentary and out of nowhere you want to do a bodybuilding show, the answer is, here's the plan, show up, let's go. It doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. This is the plan. You're committed. We're going. Now, if it's someone that's like, I'm having a struggle point in my life, I know that I need to get healthier. I need to have these behaviors. I want to be someone who aspires to have this as a part of my lifestyle, where I may not become obsessed with the gym like some trainers are, and we are,
Mm.
and stuff like that. But I want it to be a part of my life, and it's like, okay, here's a really easy test as far as you want it. Just for the first week, go one time.
Mm.
Just go to the gym one time, show up, do a workout, go through some exercises. Cool, awesome, goal accomplished. Next week, do it again. Next week, do it again. The week after, add day 2.
Yeah.
Right? You oftentimes don't want to, with something like that, especially depending, and again, it depends where they're at, but most of the time, you don't want to start doing everything at once. So if you're someone who's been sedentary in your life and this is a completely new thing, it's like, can I handle all this work? Right. So
Yeah.
you might be able to handle go to the gym once and go for a walk 2 other days in the week. Right. So you're creating that habit routine of there's this activity that's happening frequently. But a lot of times you don't want to just start changing everything. So if you take
Yeah.
someone, when you're undisciplined and things like that, you want to do it one thing at a time. And a lot of times it becomes very difficult if you're struggling to make the gym a priority because you don't like being sore, you don't like working out, you don't like to sweat, you get tired easily. And at the same token, you don't sleep well. At the same token, you don't have anything about nutrition or routine. It's hard to change all that stuff at once. And it can kind of create one of those things where you're like the little Dutch boy at the dam, where you're running around, you're plugging this hole and something falls over here, you're running over there, and it's just chaos back and forth. So
Yeah.
kind of baby stepping in, or if you have something that's a concrete goal that's set time frame, then that, you have no choice but to go all in. You want to bleed into it a little bit depending. Um,
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And the reason why like I wanted to ask you that is because, and I think you have the same thing experience too. Like we'll get people that come to you and they want to just do a 360 on their life, right? Or 180, 180, 360 are at the same spot. They
Yeah.
want to do like a 180 of their life and they want to come and all of a sudden change absolutely everything. And that might be successful for them for like a week, maybe two. And then all of a sudden, like you see all those things starting to like taper off and then just slip back to the old ways. And I think we very much underestimate like how powerful small little changes to your life can be. Like if you think if you just make like a 1% change every single day, like what the course of that looks like long term is huge, and super, super impactful. But I think we underestimate a little bit, the amount of effort that goes into making a lot of these lifestyle changes.
We do for sure. Part of it, I think part of it too lies in our instant gratification.
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
very easy for anyone, even people who are in shape, like, hey, on this day, I'm starting this new thing and we love to talk about it. We have an idea about it. We have a plan. We're talking about the plan. It gives us a false sense of accomplishment. And then you go work out for the first day and you get crushed. And it's like, oh, and there's no progress.
Yeah.
Day four, there's no progress. The only progress is soreness and you're tired. Day 10, there's no progress. Day 14, there's no progress. Day 17, you look a little bit better. Day 18, there's no progress from the last point, and so on and so forth. And it's almost like this up and down. And obviously, your body's going through changes, so that's got to adjust to a newer lifestyle. But the motivation fades fairly quickly. And then soon you'll see anyone that you might know that, oh, I started a new plan. I started working out. They're excited about it for the first week, and then they're less excited.
Yeah.
Hope and the hope, what I try to do with people, the hope for that is whatever they're looking to do, get to know them really fast and find something that's very easily attainable. So it's like
Totally.
so if it's like I want to lose 50 pounds over the next year, awesome. While we're losing 50 pounds, I'm going to make sure that you feel better and I'm going to make you stronger and make sure they notice that they're getting stronger, because you can't see strength in a picture, you can't see strength in a scale. So you need to have something where okay, that's something that's an indicator, that's a KPI, which is a key performance indicator that I'm going in the right direction, because on this path I need to get stronger to produce forces to cause my body to change correctly.
Yeah. I think that's really, really important. And I think also too, like if you are making like such a big lifestyle change, even if it's just like going to the gym like once a week and that's like a whole new world for you, like I just think it's really important to have like a good support system around you. If it's like through a trainer, through someone like a buddy that you go work out with, like just someone to help guide you a little bit, just because it does take a village to make a change, even if it's a small one.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Along
So
those lines,
what,
yeah, I
what
was
you got?
gonna I was gonna share with us a little bit or talk today about this new weight loss drug that I'm sure you've gotten questions about. I know I've been getting questions about it. Um, what are your thoughts about this tirzepatide? I can't. Am I saying it correctly? Ter,
I'm not
tirzepatide.
I'm not the English major here. You are, I believe.
I am. I don't think so.
I believe between the two of us, you have the extensive further education. I do believe, based on how it's spelled, that that is the way that you say it. So,
Well, pronunciation is not my strong suit. So if we're pronouncing it wrong, like sorry.
so the reason that this comes up, there's just a new thing going on. So, let me read from the story just to kind of go through it. So, the company Eli Lilly is making a drug to treat diabetes. I believe it's type 2.
Yes.
And they've got a drug called tirzepatide, which is going through FDA approval process. The reason this story came out because people are looking at projections of it, and what they're finding is it's helping diabetics lose weight. They're having better blood sugar levels. They are having better cardiovascular markers and stuff like that. So they're talking about it. Maybe this is a $48 billion drug, right? So Um, so one of the things that they're looking at is this safe and effective? So obviously there are folks right now that are taking these drugs that do not have diabetes. Very interesting. I was talking to someone who takes one of these medications, or has a friend that takes one of these medications.
Like this exact kind?
I'm not sure if it's this exact one, but it's one of these because there's three of them.
Right.
There's Wegovy. What's the other one? There's Wegovy, Saxenda, both from yeah. Why do they name everything so weird? Like they're just like
I don't know.
it's like reading a Harry Potter list of spells for these drug names.
And
Anyway,
we're totally
Wegovy and
butchering the names.
absolutely good, good. So hopefully the listeners won't buy them. Wegovy and Saxenda are currently in existence, and they've shown some people in a year can lose about 15% of their body weight. Basically, what it is, it's a weekly injection. So the new one, tirzepatide by Eli Lilly, is people are showing results of about 22 to 25% weight loss. Let's see. So it's sold under the name Monjarno, and it's marketed for weight loss, and it's sold higher when it was marketed that way. When it's marketed for diabetes, it's not. So where I was going with that
Of
was
course.
it's a diabetes medication, so people with diabetes need to take it because it's effective for them. People who don't take it can acquire this, and it's actually their medication. Some of these people have medication orders that are back ordered because yeah, it's being
All
used so
these
much.
weight loss people
Yeah,
interfering with their medication.
yeah. So, and one of the interesting things about it is they're talking about its sales could hit 48 billion.
Hmm.
Basically, how it works is you inject it once weekly, and it's a class of GLP-1 agonists, which mimic a hormone that help reduce food intake and appetite. So it's going to blunt your hunger at a severe rate, right? So when you have hunger cravings, you need to eat and stuff like that, it'll just make you not hungry and it'll take care of that.
If I can jump in here
Sure.
and kind of go over a little bit about the mechanism of it. So basically, it does this tirzepatide, whatever. We're just gonna call it T. Can we just call the medication T and just make our lives a little bit easier so we don't
Just
sound like
just call it the shot.
okay, the shot. It basically works on two different things. So it works on the GLP, how Anthony already said, and it also works on the GIP. Um, just one second. I had a better article and I can't find it real quick. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna have to make you cut this out.
That's fine.
I lost it. How it works. It's like super fascinating actually how it works. Here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So the shot works basically on two different things. It works on your GLP-1 and your GIP. And basically what those mean is that GLP or crap, where are my definitions? I was so prepared. I'm sorry, Anthony. Oh my
That's
God.
fine. The article is my article went in the wrong order. Anyway, where's my chat GPT screen?
Oh, fuck. Let me just type it in as well. So I had my fuck my life. Oh, not ChatGPT is giving me issues. This is terrible.
So we don't have to get too technical with this. Like,
I know. I was just trying to just give at least the definitions of it.
yeah, it just mimics hormones that stop your hunger levels.
Yes, but actually, okay. So the GLP is basically your glucagon-like peptide, and what it does is it actually stimulates insulin secretion, which helps them reduce glucagon. So insulin is the hormone that helps bring blood sugar down. Glucagon helps bring blood sugar up, and so the GLP-1 helps helps reduce this glucagon secretion and help stimulate the insulin. At the same time, not only is your body producing more insulin, but your body at the same time is also becoming more insulin sensitive. So your body can actually utilize the insulin a little bit better. And that really has a lot to do with the glucose dependent insulin tropic polypeptide, GIP. Okay, so I just want to give a little bit of history around, like a little bit of background about all of that. What GIP also does, it actually helps inhibit gastric acid secretion. So basically, whenever you're digesting food, your stomach acid, you need stomach acid to help break down your food. People that have a lot of blood sugar issues, they typically have a have a high gastric acid secretion. So they have a lot of stomach acid, and it actually causes less stomach acid to be produced. So it causes your digestive system to slow down. So now the food's traveling slower through your digestive tract, and therefore it causes for you to feel fuller longer because it just takes longer for your food to be digested. So that's basically the background of as to why people start eating less food when taking it and why people feel less hungry on it. We're working on the different hormones, of course, of our system here as well, but at the same time, your food's also being digested slower, which I think is super fascinating.
It's definitely pretty cool. I think it's great. From everything that I've read about it, it seems like it's a great option for people who are diabetic.
Yes. And also, like, I think it will help with the obesity crisis a little bit. However, I will say, as my own personal opinion, it's so new still. We know so little, in my opinion, about it. Even though we're doing all these studies and everything, for me, it's still one of those too good to be true things. And I'm like waiting for something. I'm waiting for the consequences to really start surfacing of it.
So here's the funny thing about it, right? A lot of insurance companies don't cover this, so they're going to cost about 1,500 a month. Or
That's
excuse me,
insane.
1,500 a month, roughly might come out to 13,000 to 15,000 a year, which is why their sales numbers projected at 48 billion should it get
Mm,
FDA approval. So one of the reasons that it is not approved by all insurance companies is that obesity is not considered a chronic illness by the majority of the insurance companies. Whereas the medical field would argue that, from everything that I've seen, and I'm sure there's people that do and don't, but in general, it would seem that they would push for this to be a chronic illness, obesity, that is.
mm.
To me, doesn't this sound a lot like something else that currently exists? Now, take out the diabetic population, because probably the way Americans operate, they're probably not going to be the ones that are getting the most of the quantity of these shots. Doesn't this sound like something else that is stigmatized a lot, especially in the fitness industry?
Oh, like steroids or something?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Explain to me the difference, aside from the fact that steroids have been around longer and we know the side effects.
Interesting.
You basically are enhancing your body to perform a function more effectively.
Yeah. That's why I think like the ball's gonna drop. You know what I mean? Like something is too good to be true here. Something is. And I don't know. And I think we'll know in the long term what it's all about, but it's all a little too good to be true.
Well, I don't think it's too good to be true.
No?
Um, from the data from the trials, from what people have said, from the two that already exist that are running on similar technology, there's a very obvious reason as to why the people produce weight loss. Right. So you read a study and it says they take this shot and they got the agonists and this, that, and the third, which is true. However, like what's the if we're talking to a 5-year-old, how do we explain this to a 5-year-old? They're eating less food.
Right. Yes. However, I also think like the minute like everything in your body has like a domino effect, right? The minute we start messing around with this, right? Like something else is gonna give. So I mean, it's just with any kind of medication, there is no like perfect thing out there that only gives you benefits. Like there's a cost benefit to everything.
Correct. So we already know So it's not that it's too good to be true. It's that there's a cost to it. So if you're not eating as much, so let's say you're overweight, right? Because chances are you can be overweight but not necessarily like super obese and still get a benefit from this shot. You can
Right.
look like the average American walking around and still see the benefit. Everyone's first instinct is to starve, right? So when you look at it from a metabolism standpoint, if you feed the fire, if you eat more, you will burn more usually. As long as all your other, as long as you're also like working out more, being more active and stuff like that. Obviously, if you don't manage to burn it off, you will store some of that. But one of the things that does speed up your metabolism is you having to digest more food. If you have the less, if you're having way less calories, and some of these diets are as low as 500 calories a day, is what you end up
That's
end up
awful.
consuming. If we were just take the shot out and have the conversation, it's like, hey, I want to lose some weight. I'm just going to eat 500 calories a day. As fitness professionals, we know exactly what's going to happen,
Mm.
right? So it's not that it's too good to be true or anything like that. It's there. It's works apparently and seems to be doing good. But you have that other side effect where it's like you are going to be very weak. You are going to be malnourished. You are going to have a lesser bone density. You're going to have lower muscle mass. And if you are someone who works out, you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah, but what if you do these injections and you do eat, appropriate amount of calories for your weight loss, right? Like 500 calories less than your maintenance or so. Um, so that therefore you are eating enough food, you don't have all those consequences.
Why would you be taking the shot then?
To feel better about it, to have less of the pains of losing
Thirteen
weight.
$13,000 is a lot.
Yeah, but if you're trying to do it the healthy way, but you're just trying to not feel, the pains of losing weight.
I think if you are already eating in a deficit, it you've already answered the question. It's not like this is having people lose 20% of their body weight in a month. This is 20% of their body weight in a year.
Yeah. I don't
Um,
know. I just feel like it's too new for me to really have a true opinion on it or to even like speak positively about it, to be honest. I'm just like waiting. I'm taking the wait and see approach. Maybe in a year from now I will change my tune, but right now I'm taking very much the wait and see approach. Where it's like I see it, I read what's going on. I see people's success stories with it, but I'm not convinced.
yeah, I'm not convinced either. But when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, so we give Jim Bro A, let's call him Chad, we give him all the grief in the world for taking a shot to enhance himself so he gets a better outcome from the nutrition plan or fitness plan that he's executing. Yet here we are with a shot that does the same exact thing on a very basic level, just in a different way to enhance what you're trying to do from a fitness and nutrition standpoint for your goals. Yet it's viewed as this wonder drug.
Yeah, I would just to be devil's advocate here, and I don't really disagree with what you're trying to say, but to be devil's advocate here, I would argue that this shot would at least give you some positive health aspects of it because if you can prevent like if you go from being obese to not obese anymore, right, that has so many benefits too. Um, that has so many benefits too. Um, that I would almost argue that you're moving your body to healthier states with taking this versus taking like steroids or something like that. Steroids aren't really pushing you always in a healthier state.
True, which I acknowledge, but I view this as burning the candle at both ends, just faster.
Yeah,
So you
I
eat
would
less,
argue too.
you'll eat less, you lose weight. Now, if you've ever eaten 500 calories in a day and you tried to work out, that doesn't go so well,
Yeah.
right? So what does your body composition actually look like?
But it's
Which would
also the
be
HCG diet that does something very similar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that your dog?
Yeah.
Oh, he must have had a rough day. All the bills he paid, huh?
Dude, I am telling you, I'm just like not my 100% self today. It's just been a really exhausting day.
Yeah. So the thing that I find particularly interesting is that, and this sent me down a rabbit hole looking at it the other day. So I'm looking into all this stuff. It's like, okay, let me, touch base. And I'm like, well, there's a very obvious thing. You're not going to have as much, your energy balance is going to be thrown off. So, yes, great, you lose weight, right? One thing I will say is this sounds like a far better option than bariatric surgery,
Interesting.
right? This seems like a much better idea. The reason being because you can, let's say you take this for a year and you lose all your weight and stuff like that. Should you be decide to like, okay, I'm going to change my life and I make all these healthy behaviors and now I can eat an abundance of food while still have a balance and I can eat the things that I like and have everything is just balanced and working well. You won't have the issue with the stomach capacity, which some people, do end up dealing with. So you can kind of you have a little bit more freedoms long term, in my opinion. Um,
I agree. There is definitely like, I mean, it's definitely better than, cutting yourself open and making changes to your digestive system. There are other like bariatric surgery options outside of just something so permanent too, like the gastric balloon and stuff like that. So if we had to compare this now to the gastric balloon, hmm, yeah, it all kind of equals to the same thing. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, like if um from having experience with the bariatric world, at the end of the day, these people that go seek usually like these weight loss surgeries or seek that kind of level of help, like, you know um these people, some of them have tried their very best to lose the weight through diet and exercise and just weren't successful. And some of these people, like, they are so overweight that it would take forever for them to get to where they need to if they just did the correct way because they're just so far gone already. Other people haven't really given it their full shot. They're just lazy and they just want to, just pay the money to get to help them lose the weight. But at the end of the day, even seeking bariatric services, or even take any of these enhancing things to help you lose the weight, it doesn't replace the hard work that goes into actually dieting. Right?
yeah,
Like at the end of the day, like you're still eating less food and you still have to cope with the idea and the habits of eating less food. It's like a
true.
change of lifestyle, even
Yes.
even with this injection.
So we can go ahead and we can actually just segue right into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. And this will continue exactly for what you just said. So I guess it kind of depends and on how you view obesity.
Hmm.
Do you view obesity as a chronic illness or is it a choice? Now,
I think
and
okay, go ahead.
so let me just read you off a couple of stats since 1980. In 1980, the obesity rate for adults in the United States was 15%. By 1990, it had risen 11%, bringing it to 26%. In 2000, the obesity rate was 30.5%. By 2010, the obesity rate had risen to 35.7%. In 2020, the obesity rate was estimated to be around 42%. Right now, that is obesity itself. If you look at the data on the percentage of overweight people, which I believe BMI over 35 is considered obese. Overweight is over 30. Granted, BMI is a outdated, archaic way of measuring things. It actually goes to um, you have 73.6% of adults in the United States of America are considered overweight. 42% of that population is obese. 31 is overweight but not obese.
Yeah, so overweight, I had to research it again too, because this is how little I use the BMI chart. 25 to 30 is overweight, and then 30 plus is obese. So, if what I always find surprising, if you look at someone that has a BMI of 30 and above, they're actually not as big as what you think it is, which I've always found fascinating. Like when we think of obese, like we think like 400 pounds, right? Like that's not the case. Like you can easily be obese like obesity starts much lower rate. So weight. So some people were like, oh, this person couldn't be obese. And then you do all their measurements and oh my God, this person is obese. They're not just overweight, they're obese. So I think even like our perception of what a healthy weight looks like has also been skewed because of exactly the trends that you've been mentioning. Like we're just getting adjusted to seeing people being heavier. Um, I do think that there's so many factors that go into like why this is happening that I think it's so hard to say, is it chronic? Is it a chronic disease? Is it genetic? And like everything just plays so much into it because all even our fruit or even our food products has changed so much over the past several decades. Our lifestyle has changed so much, our convenience of things has changed so much. So I think it's so hard to like pinpoint obesity on one thing. I think it's such a mix of so many factors, and that's why we're seeing these trends.
So that's great. Where do you so take out so obviously so someone like me, I'm overweight on the BMI scale. But let's take out trainers.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we should talk about so when we're talking
You're
about these higher BMI things, we
we're,
should really just like say we're not talking about people that have a low body fat percentage and are classified as BMI. We're talking about the correlation of higher body fat percentage and high BMI.
yeah. So 72% of the country is overweight.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Right. So I took a couple things and I was like, over the last 20 years, let's look at a couple other key industries that seem to what's their trend like and does it follow the same line?
Oh, interesting.
Data point number one, food service revenue, according to the National Restaurant Association. Total restaurant industry sales in the United States have increased steadily over the past several decades. In 1970, the total revenue generated by restaurants in the United States was approximately $42 billion, while in 2019, this figure had grown to over $863 billion. This growth has been accompanied by an increase in the availability of fast food and other high calorie, low nutritious options. Number
Mm.
two, gaming industry statistics. The rise in video game and computer use in the United States has been accompanied by an increase in sedentary behavior, which is a risk factor for obesity. According to the Entertainment Software Association, in 2020, 214 million Americans played video games. For those of you that know me, those are my people. And the video game industry generated over $57 billion in revenue in the United States. While not all video games are sedentary, yeah, so there's some, obviously you got to walk around and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
that's the same stat. All right, so also obviously as the obesity rate increases, the chronic disease rate has increased. So heart disease, diabetes, and other conditions and stuff like that have also increased over that same time frame. So it leaves this question. So when we look at the drug and it's like, okay, the drug is designed for diabetics and it seems like it's a wonder drug. Awesome, all three of them. Great job. But now we take that into the rest of the population and it's like, okay, is this so it's not covered by insurance because it's not viewed as a chronic illness, and we go into this kind of like dialogue like, is it a chronic illness or is it a choice?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, based upon kind of like what you have been reading off too, like obviously there's been a tremendous like change in our lifestyle too. Like there's been more fast food places available. So that of course falls into choices, like what kind of food choices are we making that are leading into that. I think also too, there's been more generations of people just eating unhealthy, right? So like I've met when I was with some families and where the whole family is obese and it's like a generational thing. It's like the kids already grow up being obese. Like some kids are even born already like extremely overweight, right? So it's just like it's like where does it start the problem? I think that's another question to ask too. Like at what point does it start? And for some people, it literally starts when they're in the womb already. That they get used to all these like terrible foods, right? They're never exposed to like nutrient dense foods. They're exposed to calorically dense foods, and you can just see that then cater through the rest of their lives. And nostalgic foods to them is usually a bunch of like crap food. Then, if they do make a lifestyle change, so I think that part plays into it. So I think I think it's both the system and a choice that bleed in together to creating the systemic issue.
So you're saying it's both?
I think it's both. I think it's hard for it to not to be both.
Okay. So yeah, looking at it, like if there is research to back if the parents are obese or one of the parents is obese, the child will be obese.
Mm.
One of the things I've said it on this podcast, I say it all the time. There is something in your house that is technically unhealthy, or by some whatever barometer that you look at your food, someone you love that lives in that house, even if it's not you, is going to eat it, or it will be you. Right.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, so chronic illness to me sounds more like a nature thing. That sounds like a nurture problem.
Chronic disease isn't necessarily always a nature problem. Like for instance, like type 2 diabetes, is considered to be a chronic disease, right? But that's your self-induced disease.
You can, yeah, but you can have people that just, like, am I incorrect in that? Like, there's people that have healthy weight and they end up diabetes. Is that not?
Yeah, yeah. So diabetes isn't necessarily tied to you being overweight. I mean, there's also skinny people that get super unhealthy, and that can be triggering. That could trigger type 2 diabetes as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say on the choice factor here, because it's too controllable. Like,
Yeah, but also too, if you think of like, especially here in America, like when you like drive, I mean, especially North Carolina is a great example. Like just drive a couple hours in any direction, right? And you are in the middle of like nowhere. And if you look at the food choices around there, like how horrible are these food choices? And then how many fresh food options are there? There's definitely like what's considered to be like food deserts in the United States. Not food deserts in the sense that you don't have access to food, is that you don't have access to fresh food. And like once you start paying attention to that, because at first I was like, yeah, right, like I don't believe this. But then like once you start driving around a lot, like you see it, like you literally drive out in the middle of nowhere and you just try to eat something healthy. It is very hard. I'm not saying it's not possible, right? So that's where that choice factor comes in again. But there's far less options for you than in Raleigh, and far less options. And I find there's far less options here than there were for me in Florida too.
there's a place that's about 20 to 30 feet in walking distance from where you're sitting right now. It's called your kitchen, and you could go to the grocery store, and you don't have to buy organic food, and you can just choose to cook your food at home.
Yes, if you're fortunate to enough
Which,
to live in an area where you can do that. But I promise you, there are definitely areas in the United States, and that's where where there's a lot of obesity there too, where they don't have that easy access to healthy foods.
to a grocery store?
Yeah.
Where are they?
Okay, so there's a place, especially in the middle of Florida. It's Okeechobee. If you go to Okeechobee, oh my God, will you be horrified of what A goes on there, and B, like the grocery store that they do have there.
So they have
And
so they have grocery stores.
they have
They
like
just might
one.
not they just might not have great ones, but it's still a grocery store now.
Yeah, but okay, but what if your grocery store doesn't even have like really good vegetables? I mean, haven't you ever gone to a grocery store and you looked at their produce section and you're like, this is shit. Like, most of the stuff is expired looking.
True, carnivore diets exist, keto diets exist.
Yeah, I think it's much more complicated than that.
Okay. So yeah, certainly if you're buying all your food, right? So if the only thing you make is a food reservation, or you make a food order, certainly you're going to have some bad choices. Obviously, depending where you are in the country, that's going to vary based on what you have available to you. Some areas just happen to have, that's where a lot of healthy shops want to set up, a lot of the healthier food places. Fast food chains are going to be everywhere. Certainly, fast food plays a role. The development in our ability to produce cheap food really, really fast
Yeah.
kind of lines up with the patience levels that people have, right? So we want instant gratification. We want it now. Like I could be eating Taco Bell in the next like 7 minutes if I just ended this and just ran, right? I might be able to get Taco Bell inside my body in the next 7 minutes.
Yeah.
McDonald's even faster from where I am. So if I want a salad, it's going to take a little bit more because I got to drive a little bit further. But I'm still viewing this as a choice. There's too much. There's too much that can prevent obesity. That can make this that there's too much. There's too many things that can prevent it. You don't need money either to not be obese. All you have to do, realistically, if you were obese and you started walking for half an hour every single day, you would lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's interesting because I used to have so much more of like that perspective, and I still do, because you're absolutely right. Like, let's be fair. Like Anthony is absolutely right. I just, from meeting with a lot of these people, it's so much more complicated. in the sense of like a lot of mental stuff goes into it then. Like yes, like from a basic level, yes, you can argue that it's just a choice. You very much could argue that. But then how to execute, I would say the execution of it is sometimes like the hardest part. Because not only is your choice just in the way, but it's the psychological aspect is a huge, huge part of that too. Because in the end, we're kind of asking people to change who they are, who they view themselves to be. And that's, and you have to put a lot of work into yourself to kind of get over that.
And I'm glad you brought that up. So what we know about nutrition in adults is a lot of these habits. It's all habit. Most of it is habits
Yeah.
caused by any number of things. It could be caused by the way that you were raised, the environment that you came up in, what your food's availability situation was, like you alluded to. My favorite one is the dopamine hit. So
Mm,
obviously, it's no secret lately. Everyone's mental health is a little up in the air. We've talked about this before. So, you're going to have times where you have seasonal depression. You're going to have times where you're just depressed. Maybe you had trauma that you didn't deal with. Maybe you like just run around like a bat out of hell constantly and you don't take time to actually like sit and digest. Like a lot of these behaviors started long ago. So when you look at what got us into this whole kind of dialogue anyway, which you look at the diabetic shot, which is a band-aid that you put on it. Same thing with the bariatric surgery, which doesn't address the main issue, which psychologically is where the issue is. It's your habits, it's your thought patterns, it's how you view food, it's your relationship with food and things like that. So where it goes into that, it's like it doesn't address it at all. It just puts a band-aid on the problem. So what
oh,
if you
100%.
so
Yeah.
if you never fix the habit and whenever you're sad, you want to eat all the ice cream in the world, but you never address like that issue where if you could just fix that and like you're sad, you now eat something else, or you notice that you're sad and things of that nature. So when you go into kind of going back in and like the psychological stuff, and yeah, there's certainly more to it, but there's also if it sounds a lot like you're unwilling to change your lifestyle. Certainly, I know you mentioned this earlier. You can get to a point where there's no shot, and you got to do something, right?
Right.
Something's got to happen. You need some kind of major intervention. But for most of that's that's not as extreme as you might see it, but you'll start to see these people break down
Mm.
long before that. But a lot of it is like they just chose that this is the way it's going to be. And now with our society, we just make a meme about how it's funny to not enjoy doing cardio for 5 minutes because I feel like I'm gonna die. Like it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny to be like, haha, I was out of breath going up the stairs.
Yeah.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? We used to kill fucking tigers with spears.
Yeah. Yeah. It honestly, like, I feel like there's so much that we have to do as a society to help fix a lot of these things. And it's going to take a lot of time, but also like a lot of like hard, like cold, hard truth. Kind of like how you mentioned, like you're unwilling to change and following that train of thought. Okay, like why are you unwilling to change? Like what's going on? What's the deeper rooted aspect of things? And especially when you are that extremely overweight, it's not that you just need a trainer, it's not that you just need a dietitian. Like, you need the trainer, you need the dietitian, you need the psychologist, like you need the whole program, you need all the people, because it is that hard and there is so much change you have to go through, because not like you're basically changing yourself to being healthier, and you're changing your self identity, and that's really hard. It's really hard to change your self identity.
Yeah, it can be a little bit. But again, does that make it chronic illness? I don't think it does. You can certainly. So I'll give you an example. My entire family is obese. Technically, they have been all my life. My mom was very thin when she was young. As she grew, she wasn't fat, but she was overweight a little bit, right?
Mm,
Um, like so I started my life. I was overweight as well, right? Those were the habits. Like we had Pepsi at dinner, we had Coca Cola, right? We had takeout food, right?
yeah.
And so, but yet I'm not. I'm now not. I'm not obese. I don't have any of those bad habits. I have my diet in a good balance. So I think it's a dangerous road to go down to say this is chronic illness, because if you are 15 years old and you are 50% body fat, it's like, oh, this is the way that things were. These are the cards that I was dealt. Um, Now, as far as like, so the way I'm looking at it is, I see this very much as a choice, because
Mm.
technically, at any point in your obesity scale, you could get out of it. however unlikely at the top rungs.
Yeah. The only thing is that I would argue is that, you know, there's obesity just causes so many health consequences, right? And those things, and I don't know, it's just so much more of a systemic thing. And I would even argue that other chronic conditions, let it even be like things like heart disease and stuff like that, there are lifestyle factors that you can do to change to make that disease better. And that's kind of similar with obesity too. Like there are things that you can do to make that better and even go away. And even with type 2 diabetes, like type 2 diabetes is 100% avoidable, right? 100% avoidable if you just like cleaned up your diet and you knew how to pair foods correctly together and stuff like that. And so therefore, like, I'd almost put in diabetes. You'd almost have to put type 2 diabetes in that same bucket then too.
So, are you saying you believe obesity is a choice?
No, I think I'm still sticking by my 50-50.
So, do you think obesity is preventable?
Yes.
Okay.
But I 100%, of course, obesity is preventable. I also think there is a choice to it, but I also think that because of how complex people are and people's decision making, all of that,
Uh,
um,
Let me stop here. I think you're looking at it from the standpoint of, is it a choice to stay obese? That's not how we're kind
mm,
of talking about this. We're talking about this as far as like when you go from and you go through your adult life as far as you become obese.
I don't know. I feel like all across the board, when you're younger, I would say as a kid, it's not your choice because as a kid, you don't have really have a choice of what you're eating,
To
like
some
a
degree.
3-year old. A
Yeah,
3-year old doesn't really have a choice, right? So if they're already starting off obese, like you're already creating so many bad habits and so many like food addiction issues already from such an early age. So then it's like, okay, like, what point does it become your problem? Is like probably another question too. Probably at what point do you start making your own groceries? Do you start making your own food decisions? That's probably when you can say that's probably more of a choice. As a kid, I wouldn't say it's your choice. It's probably more of your parents' infliction, but then it's like the system, right? It's like the you know the system that's governing you as a kid that's causing for you to have it. So it's not really a choice at that point. So that's why I still say about my 50-50. I think it's far more complex. And I think that's why we're not solving it, quite frankly, because it's not just like, oh, it's the food industry. Those are the villains, right? Like, it's the gaming industry because they're making us sedentary, right? Like it's more, it's everything.
yeah. It's a
And
little
then on
bit.
top of it, your choice.
So it's certainly a factor, and the reason I called out those stats is because it certainly lines up. I have played video games, just to use myself as an example, and I'll use all my friends as an example actually, because only one of them would qualify as obese, or two of them would. We've played video games since we were like 7, like all the time. It's a frequent thing. Certainly, generationally, we've seen a change where we spend less time outside. Where there's less playing, there's less academic programs, there's less sports going on in a lot of youth schools and things of that nature. Um, but still, and also like yeah, a lot of it, how the cards you're dealt play a role in what's going on, right? So that could be your parental unit, but it has to be looked at like what at what point do you keep blaming your parents for everything that's going wrong in your adult life, right? So
Mm.
if I grow up and I'm obese as a kid, right, and I don't like sports, that's not my thing, I never got into it, I'm playing video games all the time. At some point, I'm an adult, and at some point, like it's not like it's almost like this acceptance of, oh, this is just the way it's always been because my everyone in my family was fat, it must run in the family. And now I go ahead and like I just carry that until I'm 50, and now suddenly it's a chronic disease.
Yeah. I agree. I think like that's almost where like Jocko's like book then comes into play, like extreme ownership kind of comes in then. Like you have to take ownership at some point of your life. And the trajectory of your life, the choices of your life, and you can bring a change in there. I just think that sometimes it's so much harder to change than we sometimes give it credit. Like we sometimes paint this picture that it's so easy to make changes. Even though we don't necessarily say that here in this podcast, but I think generally as society, we look at people that are obese and we say, oh, why don't you just change, right? Like just make changes. And I think there's way more to it than, because if it was that easy, they would do it, I would argue.
I don't know about that. I mean, I so take a look at this. if you were to drink a protein shake, which ups your protein intake, have a glass of water, and add 30 minutes to however length of time you sleep on average, you would start to see changes. If
Yeah,
you
but
did that,
that's what you know with your knowledge, right? A lot of people don't have access to you and your knowledge, or people like you and your knowledge, I would argue.
well,
And
so here's the thing: is that hidden knowledge? Is that not easy knowledge to find? That if that you should drink water every day, that you should eat a decent amount of protein, that you should sleep a little bit, right? Everyone knows sleep is important to some degree.
yeah, but then I'm still surprised with how many people that I do meet that this is still like news to them.
True, they exist, and they live on some weird planet.
I don't
I
know. I can't say that for me, at least, if that speaks true. I think I think we do live I think we live a little bit in a bubble of health and fitness and all of that. And even people that are like our clients of ours, right? And that live in this world with us too. And then once you step outside of that, you start meeting people that didn't have this privilege of being around this kind of lifestyle around professionals like us. They have such little knowledge around it. And they believe that you have to be vegan to lose weight and stuff like that. And I say that because I meet these people.
I don't disagree that they exist. I think if you look at the way anything's handled in the last 3 years, you know that people will find ways to be like, "Wow, I never thought I'd meet someone who I wasn't sure they were from Earth." Um, so
Yeah.
I think so. I'm obviously being a very very firm devil's advocate here on this topic because you went first and you chose to straddle the line. So um,
I did, and I stand by it. And that's mainly too because just to share, right? Like being a dietitian and having like been in the bariatric world for a little bit, for a couple months, which was super eye-opening, and having been able to sit down with people that are like 300 pounds plus, it is such an eye-opening experience. And to the degree of it softened me that this much, where I was like, "Oh, it's so much more," right? Like it's and I used to think it was so much more black and white. And yeah, I don't know. I learned a lot from sitting down with these people. And also too, yeah, like maybe they made me soft a little bit, in the sense of I started to feel more bad for them. And like, I see how challenging it is for them. And like, they're desperate to lose it and they stand in their own way and all of that. Um, but yeah, I also saw how complex the subject is. And maybe that's where I'm coming from.
I never said it wasn't complex, and I never said it was black and white. I will always view this as a choice. I think obviously you can take it to a point where you will develop some serious illnesses and it really put your health in jeopardy to the point where we're looking at disease. I think you could take it that far for sure, but I think somewhere along the way you had a choice and there were things to be done. And I know you make the case that we are surrounded by professionals. We're trainers ourselves. We interact with this community. A lot of people don't. A lot of times when I talk to some people about some health stuff, it's like I'm speaking Chinese. I was once someone that was overweight, and I didn't know shit. And if I move more, I lose weight. Like,
Yeah, you
and
figured it out.
and that's what I mean. And I figured it out in a really shitty way. Like I was doing fucking bullshit and it was working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's where it's become like right now, like we looked at Chat GPT, right? That exists. We talked about that the last few episodes. Like all it takes is what is it, 12 characters in the Chat GPT and I have a workout. Super easy to find. Let's say you don't know how to use Chat GPT, scroll through Instagram. This information is not revolutionary. You'll also
Yeah.
find really, really bad information. You'll find really good information. You'll find 74 different diets. Some of them are insane. However, they all work. We all also know if we eat things that are to some basic level of psychology, we know that what a healthy food is and what a not healthy food is. There's a person in America that I could show a bag of chips and a piece of broccoli, and they'll tell me the bag of chips is healthier. There's not one person in this country. And so when you look at
Mhm.
little things like that, that's what I'm talking about. As far as like, is this really chronic illness? Or is it something
Yeah.
that like what is a choice as far as like where you are now? If you're at end stage and maybe you're like 55 to 60 and you are super overweight, like you're 800 pounds, like obviously that needs to be handled different, right? So you know
Yeah.
at that point, you might be too far gone. Although I still don't believe that you're too far gone at that point. There's something you can do. Like we could play catch with the ball. Technically, you're going to burn more calories. But yeah, so that's kind of my stance on it. Because like I said, there was like extreme ownership is like key. There's only so much time that you can just blame on. Like a lot of it, like you can be dealt a shitty hand and still figure it out. There are plenty of success stories. Like some of the best stories that you'll find. Like we started this conversation, David Goggins got dealt a shitty hand, and look where he is now. Like there's this journey, this growth, and part of that is that getting away from that victim mindset. So
Yeah.
and
No, I agree. And also too, I think like a degree of like how desperate are you plays into it as well. How desperate are you to make a change? And if you're desperate enough, you'll figure it out. Because there are so many resources out there for you.
yeah. And now here's a disclaimer. If you are someone who is overweight or obese and you do not care and you are okay and it's good okay, great, that's fine. Like hey,
You do you.
live your
Yeah.
life, live your truth, do that. But if you're someone who like is like, I wish I could lose 20 to 30 pounds, but I just can't do it. Nothing I've ever tried works. I was born this way. This ran in my family. Well, maybe everyone in your family ate like an asshole. Maybe no one in your family ever worked out, went for a walk, and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that you have to do that shit too. And I'm sorry to like be
Amen.
so blunt, but like legitimately, like it's got to be that simple. Literally eat protein, eat colorful things, drink water, sleep. You will start losing weight. None of those things cost money. Well, maybe
Yeah.
the protein, but none of those things really cost money. With when we look at like processed foods and stuff like that, we're talking about the grocery store. I'm sure there's some areas where it's a little bit longer to get to a grocery store, but you can get to a shitty grocery store. You can get to like there's something you can eat. You know what I mean? um, you might not find Whole Foods, which okay, that makes sense, but um, you get something. And if not, I'll open the grocery store in your neighborhood and I'll become rich off that. So you can shoot me those zip codes if you're in one of them.
There you go, guys.
That's about it. That was a pretty deep conversation. I don't think we intended to spend too much long on that topic, but there were just some straws that we had to tug out a little bit. So it's been a great episode. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you. I think it was kind of fun to have this kind of discussion, and I'm sure like I would love to hear from like other people and like what their thoughts are around it too. I don't know, I think it's a fun and interesting conversation. Fun
Oh yeah.
debate.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we'll be back with more interesting topics and debates just like that. We'll see if we can figure out this diabetic drug when it's going to be approved by the FDA. You
Yeah.
guys take care and we'll see ya.
Bye guys.